It was just another busy night at the Gilded Oak, one of those high-end restaurants where money talks louder than words. For Emily Carter, the waitress who'd been working there for 5 years, it was just another shift filled with demanding customers, rushed orders, and endless cups of coffee. But then she walked in. Karoline Leavitt, the name everyone whispered about but no one dared to mention. You see, Karoline wasn't just anyone. She was the heiress to a billion-dollar fortune, the woman whose face graced magazine covers and gossip columns alike. But tonight, she wasn't here for the attention. No, she sat quietly by the window, sipping her wine as if she were just another patron. And when Emily served her, something happened that would change everything. When Karoline handed over her check at the end of the meal, Emily froze. There, scrawled across the bill in elegant handwriting, was a note. A single sentence that made Emily burst into tears right there in front of the entire restaurant. What did it say? Why did it hit so hard? To understand, we have to go back to the beginning of a story that's darker, more twisted, and far more shocking than anyone could have imagined. Emily Carter wasn't your typical waitress. At 28 years old, she carried herself with a quiet strength that made people take notice. She had piercing green eyes that seemed to see right through you, and a smile that could light up even the darkest corners of the Gilded Oak. But beneath that composed exterior lay a story most people didn't know. 5 years ago, Emily's life was completely different. Back then, she lived in a small town surrounded by family and friends. Her days were simple, her worries few, but everything changed the night her younger brother, Jacob, disappeared without a trace. The police investigated, of course, but they never found him. No body, no ransom note, nothing. Just silence. That disappearance tore Emily apart. It drove her parents into an early grave, left her sister broken, and forced Emily to leave behind everything she loved. She moved to the city, hoping to start fresh, but the memories of Jacob haunted her every step of the way. Working at the Gilded Oak became her escape, a place where she could focus on other people's problems instead of her own. Then there was Karoline Leavitt, the woman whose arrival turned Emily's world upside down. On the surface, Karoline looked like perfection personified, stunningly beautiful, impossibly wealthy, and seemingly untouchable. But looks can be deceiving. Behind closed doors, Karoline carried secrets of her own, secrets so dark they threatened to destroy everything she'd worked so hard to build. What neither woman realized was how intertwined their lives truly were. And it all started with that single sentence written on the check. It happened near the end of Karoline's meal. She had been polite throughout, tipping generously and offering small talk whenever Emily checked in. But as she signed her check, something shifted in her demeanor. Her hand trembled slightly as she added a few words beneath her signature before sliding it across the table. Emily took the check without thinking much of it at first. She was used to customers leaving random notes, compliments, complaints, even marriage proposals. But this one was different. As soon as she read the words, her breath caught in her throat. I know what happened to Jacob. For a moment, the world around Emily faded away. The chatter of diners, the clinking of glasses, the hum of conversation, all of it disappeared. All she could hear was the pounding of her own heart. How did Karoline know about Jacob? They'd never met before tonight. And why would she bring it up now after all these years? Before Emily could process what she was feeling, tears began streaming down her face. She didn't mean to cry, not in front of everyone, but the emotion hit her so hard she couldn't stop it. Customers turned their heads, confused by the sudden outburst. Even Karoline looked startled, though her expression quickly softened into something resembling sympathy. "Are you okay?" Karoline asked softly, standing from her seat. But Emily couldn't answer. She shook her head and rushed toward the staff room, clutching the check tightly in her hand. Behind her, Karoline hesitated for only a second before following. When they were alone, Karoline finally spoke. "I'm sorry if I shocked you," she said, her voice steady but laced with regret. "But I thought you deserved to know." "Know what?" Emily demanded, her voice trembling. "Who are you? Why do you know about Jacob?" Karoline sighed deeply, as though bracing herself for what came next. "Because," she replied, "I was there the night he disappeared." The room fell silent after Karoline's confession. Emily stared at her, trying to process what she'd just heard. "You were there?" she repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. "Why didn't you tell anyone? Why are you telling me now?" Karoline hesitated, her gaze dropping to the floor. "It's complicated," she admitted. "Back then, I was different. Younger, reckless, and caught up in things I shouldn't have been. Things that got out of control." Emily's mind raced. For years, she'd imagined countless scenarios surrounding Jacob's disappearance: kidnapping, accident, running away. But never once had she considered someone like Karoline might be involved. "What kind of things?" she pressed, her tone sharp with desperation. Karoline took a deep breath, as if steeling herself for the story she was about to share. "Jacob wasn't alone that night," she began. "He was with a group of us, a few friends and me. We were partying out by the lake, drinking, laughing, being stupid kids. But things went wrong, so wrong." As Karoline spoke, the pieces of the puzzle started falling into place. She explained how Jacob had wandered off during the party, claiming he needed some air. When he didn't return, the others panicked but decided to cover it up rather than call for help. They feared getting in trouble for underage drinking and other illegal activities they'd been engaged in that night. "But why didn't you come forward?" Emily demanded, her voice trembling with anger and pain. "Do you know how long I've searched for him? How much it's cost my family?" "I wanted to," Karoline replied, tears forming in her eyes. "But the others threatened me. They said if I told anyone, they'd ruin me, and they weren't bluffing. By the time I gained enough power and money to fight back, it was too late." The trail had gone cold. Emily's heart ached with a mix of emotions: anger, betrayal, and a glimmer of hope. If Karoline was telling the truth, this could finally lead her to answers. But she couldn't trust her completely, not yet. "Where is he?" she asked, her voice breaking. "Is he alive?" Karoline shook her head, her expression pained. "I don't know. After that night, I lost track of everything. But I do remember something: a name. One of the guys mentioned a place called Blackwood Farm. It was where they said they'd take him." Blackwood Farm. Emily hadn't heard of it before, but now it was the only lead she had. Determined to uncover the truth, she vowed to investigate further, but doing so wouldn't be easy. The people Karoline described sounded dangerous, people who wouldn't hesitate to silence anyone who came too close to the truth. As Emily left the restaurant that night, clutching the check with its cryptic note, she knew her life would never be the same again. The road ahead was fraught with danger, but for the first time in years she felt a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, she'd finally find closure. The next morning, Emily wasted no time. She dug into everything she could find about Blackwood Farm. At first, there was nothing, just a vague mention of an old property somewhere in the countryside. But then she stumbled upon a news article from years ago. It mentioned a fire at Blackwood Farm, a suspicious blaze that destroyed the main house and left behind only charred ruins. Her heart pounded as she read further. Witnesses reported hearing screams coming from inside the building before it went up in flames. Authorities ruled it accidental, but some locals whispered about foul play. Could Jacob have been there that night? Was he trapped inside when the fire started? Determined to learn more, Emily drove out to the site of the old farm. The journey took hours, winding through narrow roads surrounded by dense forest. When she finally arrived, all that remained was a desolate field, littered with remnants of the past: a crumbling chimney, scattered bricks, and patches of scorched earth. As she wandered through the overgrown terrain, her phone buzzed in her pocket. It was a text from Karoline: "Be careful. If they catch you digging too deep, they won't hesitate to stop you." Emily's stomach churned. Whoever they were, they clearly didn't want anyone uncovering what happened at Blackwood Farm. Still, she pressed on, searching for anything that might give her a clue. That's when she spotted it: a rusted metal box half buried beneath a pile of debris. With trembling hands, she pried it open. Inside, she found a collection of items: photographs, letters, and a journal. One photo caught her eye immediately. It was of Jacob, laughing with a group of teenagers she assumed were the ones Karoline had mentioned. In the journal, she discovered entries detailing wild parties, dangerous games, and escalating tensions among the group. But the final entry chilled her to the bone. Written in hurried handwriting, it described a fight that spiraled out of control. Someone had accused Jacob of stealing money, and tempers flared. If he doesn't leave soon, the writer noted, I don't think he'll make it out alive. Suddenly, Emily heard footsteps crunching nearby. She froze, glancing around to see who or what was approaching. From the shadows emerged a figure, their face obscured by the dim light. You shouldn't be here, the voice growled, stepping closer. Emily clutched the box tightly, her mind racing. This was it, the moment of truth. Would she walk away with answers, or would this stranger silence her forever? The stranger stepped into the light, revealing a weathered face lined with years of hard living. It was one of the people from the photo, the same person who had written the final journal entry. For a moment, neither spoke. The tension in the air was suffocating. I figured you'd show up sooner or later, the man said, his voice rough but steady. Word travels fast when someone starts asking questions about Blackwood. Emily swallowed hard, clutching the box closer to her chest. I'm not leaving until I know what happened to my brother, she replied, her voice firm despite the fear coursing through her veins. The man sighed, running a hand over his face. Fine, he muttered, but if I tell you, you have to promise to leave it alone. No cops, no media, just let it rest. She hesitated but nodded. Okay, she whispered. Tell me. What followed was a story even darker than Emily had imagined. That night at Blackwood Farm, the argument escalated into violence. One of the group, fueled by anger and alcohol, attacked Jacob. Panicked, the others tried to intervene, but it was too late. In a desperate attempt to cover their tracks, they set fire to the house, hoping to erase all evidence. But he wasn't inside, the man continued, his voice cracking. We left him tied up nearby. We didn't think anyone would find him, but maybe someone did. Maybe he got away. Hope surged within Emily, though it was fragile and uncertain. If Jacob had survived, where was he now, and why hadn't he come home? As the sun began to dip below the horizon, casting long shadows across the field, the man handed her one last item, a small keychain engraved with Jacob's initials. This is all I have left, he said. Take it. Maybe it'll help you find closure. With the keychain in hand, Emily returned to the city, her mind racing with possibilities. She reached out to missing persons organizations, private investigators, and anyone else who might help her piece together the puzzle. Days turned into weeks, and just as hope began to fade, a breakthrough came. A woman in another state recognized Jacob's picture from a local news article. She claimed to have seen him wandering near her town years ago, disoriented and injured. Though the trail was cold, it gave Emily something new to pursue. Months later, Emily stood outside a modest home in a quiet neighborhood. Her hands shook as she knocked on the door. When it opened, a man stepped out, older, thinner, but unmistakably her brother. Jacob, she whispered, tears streaming down her face. He stared at her for a moment, disbelief etched onto his features. Then, slowly, he nodded. Emily, he murmured, his voice hoarse with emotion. Is that really you? They embraced, holding on to each other as if afraid to let go. Years of pain, uncertainty, and longing melted away in that single moment. Jacob's journey back to his family wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in so long, Emily felt whole again. And as for Karoline Leavitt, she kept her word, staying out of the spotlight while quietly funding efforts to bring those responsible for Jacob's ordeal to justice. Though she couldn't undo the past, she hoped redemption might still be possible. In the end, Emily realized that some answers are worth fighting for, and that sometimes love can overcome even the darkest secrets. So, what do you think? Did Emily deserve to find her brother after all these years? And what about Karoline? Do you believe she's truly changed, or is she still hiding more secrets? Let me know in the comments below. Your thoughts mean a lot to me. If you loved this story and want to see more like it, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for future videos. Trust me, you won't want to miss out on the next chapter of our true crime series. Who knows? The next big twist might just blow your mind. And if you're curious about what happened to the others involved in Jacob's disappearance, stick around for the bonus scene after the credits. It's going to be wild. Thanks for watching, everyone. I'll see you in the next video. Until then, stay curious and keep uncovering the truth.